Yeah.
There we go. Hey, what is up, everybody? Thank you for tuning into our weekly Tuesday, where this week's episode is going to be how to thrive in this upcoming market. Today, I am lucky enough to have my two co-hosts. So you get two co-hosts for the price of one. We got Abby and Jen in the house. Abby was not feeling well last week, but Jen loved it so much we wanted to have her back again. So it was kind of nice. So glad you're back, Abby. And today, the stuff that we're going to dive into is in this upcoming market. You see a lot of folks talk about doom and gloom, or how bad it's going to be, and all of the things, right? And there's really no way to predict what's going to happen. There's really no way to predict COVID was going to happen, right? And that changed the market quite a bit. So in unpredictable times, in an unpredictable market, what it looks like, what it appears like, obviously, that there's a downturn in the market. What shows that? You go on the MLS 1 year ago and houses were selling for way over asking, right? 7-8 months ago, it was doing the same thing. Where now you look at a lot of properties, they are sitting on the market quite a bit longer, right? Your average listing time has gone up quite a bit. Not only that, can you think about all the big drops in price, right? So the drops in price are what I've been seeing a ton. So I think that's where you're really seeing a lot of that, right? We're seeing more time in the market. We're seeing a bigger price drop. So how do we combat that? How are we going to be successful and still find all the deals? And obviously you're going to know a couple of these things that I'm going to get into, but there's going to be some things also too that maybe some of you don't know. And that's where I'm going to try to bring some extra value today. So one of the first things that I've noticed a lot are buyers are, if you are wholesaling, buyers are paying less. Right? Because if you think of the market, how quickly it's changed in the last 6 months, if we think of the next 6 months and what that could look like, if I'm a fix and flip person, I have to wait 30 days to close on the house or more, depending on where you live. You're looking at sometimes 30, 60, 90, sometimes 100 plus days of renovations, depending on how big or small the project is. Then you've got to stage it, list it, photos, get on the market. Time on the market's been longer, like we just talked about earlier. So it could literally be 6 to 9 months before you find that deal till you're getting cashed out. Now, if you could see in the last 9 months how quick the market has changed from going red hot to quite a bit cooled down from the high interest rates, that's high risk, right? So if you're going to be doing those projects, a lot of investors in the last few years bought a property. We're doing a fix and flip. Project went behind. We're in it a little bit longer, but because of that, it sold for even more money because the market was red hot and they felt like they got really, they thought they hit it, right? And they figured out the whole hack. It's easy when the market is going up and houses were appreciating and going for so much over asking. But on the downside, that's going to hurt you, right? Time will hurt you on those. So it's a quick fix and flip if you're going to do those. So for us personally in-house, if I'm going to do a fix and flip, I'm only going to do the light ones. The ones that aren't going to take me 6-9 months to do. Something that I could get done in under 30 days. So what are the 30 days fix and flips? I'm doing light kitchen work, light bathroom work, some light flooring, some paint, stuff like that. We're not doing any major guts. If those are going to be done, guys, we're wholesaling those other investors. And that's been one of the best strategies that I've seen, especially in a downturn market, is really wholesaling. The challenge is a lot of the buyers are going to pay less. A lot of the sellers still want top dollar. So your assignment fees might get squeezed a little bit. So if you're going to buy it, you got to buy it right, because that's where you're making your money. So you have to be able to justify your price. You have to explain to folks maybe what the market is going through right now. For the last how many years you see the market was red hot. And part of our process that when we're going to give somebody a cash offer, we have to anticipate what that property is going to be worth in the next 9 months. And from what the last 6-7 months have been, if I continue that cycle, I have to project accordingly, and the prices have to be accordingly too. So we have to explain that to a seller. And right now there's a lot of sellers who still want humongous money for their property because that's what they've been accustomed to. And I understand if I was selling my house, I would too. And I did. And I got all the money for it because it's a perfect time to sell. But now, months later, it's a little bit different challenge. So presenting cash offers, we really want to explain that process and get it good. I've seen a lot of folks who do heavy fix and flips, and that's primarily their business. I've seen them not doing those now. I've seen them wholesaling a lot of those deals to other investors and letting their buyers do those fix and flips. So they're staying in it very, very fast, quick transactions. So even in the downturn market, they're not in that deal very long. So if I'm buying deals cash, that's what I'm looking for. Now for us, one of our favorite things to do is these creative finance deals. And that's probably why a lot of you are here. So these creative finance deals, I really believe are going to be the biggest niche in the next probably 18 to 24 months plus. From what I keep on seeing, and from everybody else keeps on saying, it looks like that market is going to continue to turn. Interest rates, if they stay where they are, if they even slightly go higher, for folks who do creative finance, that's actually a good thing. So this is going to be the advantage we're going to find in these next handful of years. What I believe is going to be these opportunities. So how do we find these? There's going to be these creative finance deals in abundance. There's literally a list of ways that we're going to be able to share with you guys of how we're finding these leads. But really, it's connecting with other investors who are wholesalers, who are the cash wholesalers. I'm finding deals right on the MLS now. If you're trying to find a creative deal on the MLS years ago, for the last few years, it was pretty hard to do. Everybody usually wanted cash. Now you're going to find those. And what does that mean? You're going to find somebody who maybe recently bought a house, who owes way too much on it, who now needs to sell it. If somebody bought a house in the last 12 months and they're in a position where they need to sell it now, that's going to be a challenge for a lot of these folks. So I've had some where they've listed them with realtors. Realtor puts on the market, it's not selling. They owe too much, and for some reason they need to sell. A lot of times they've moved, house is vacant, so they have a high level of motivation, right? So they have a high level of motivation. They're in a situation where they need to sell, and they're in a situation where not even a realtor could help them by putting on the market. A cash buyer can't help them because they owe too much on the house and they can't get it for the big discount. So really, the only ones who are going to make those deals happen are going to be the folks like us, the ones who could understand how to structure that offer where it's a win for your seller, it's a win for you too. And then it's a win if you're going to wholesale that deal to another investor, or you're going to keep it in-house. And like I talked to our team about, my wife, our goal is pretty heavily to start buying and keeping in-house a lot of properties next year, right? Because I'm going to find more of these opportunities. So what do these look like? Once again, we did a deal if you go to Fave, F-A-V-E, favehomebuyers.com, you can see a lot of our deals on there, guys. So if you want to take a look, see what deals we always have available. I think we have one in Texas right now. These are some really rough houses, guys, but it's like unbelievably cheap for these houses. And they're open to terms or cash, but the cash is so low, that's almost neck and neck. We've got deals all over the place. South Carolina. I wish I had Courtney here because I know she'd rattle off a few more. I'm sure you probably know some, but
we do. The Mesa, it's a 55 and older. It's definitely a good deal.
In Arizona.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a 55 and older community. So it makes it tough for some of us younger folks. Some of these are a little bit more open though, too. We found some of them can have a lower age depending on the group. So these creative finance deals, what we're finding right now in our team are, even a lot of our students, which are turnkey houses are in beautiful neighborhoods. What I really want to find are these turnkey houses. A lot of these big fixer-uppers and projects, I'm not as interested in. Believe me, I will take down every deal that makes sense, and I will. But the main focus for the ones that I want to start buying and the ones that we're going to start accumulating are going to be these turnkey houses, these beautiful houses in beautiful neighborhoods, like the one we wrote up today is in Ohio. The house ARV is about 190,000. We're getting it for 146 plus we're paying closing costs. It is in a smaller town on the minutes from Lake Erie in Ohio, about 35 miles west of Cleveland. So it's in a pretty nice area. Cute house, needs nothing. It's literally turnkey. Area houses rent in that range for about 1,800. We're taking it down for 1,100 bucks a month. Is the PITI. So that is the payment with the principal, the interest, taxes, and insurance. So if you hear me talk about PITI, that means it's including all of that. So our payment we're taking over is 1,100 bucks. We're doing $5,000 down to the seller. And here's in a situation where the seller's behind on their mortgage right now, and they're going to come up with the cash to get it current. And then once they do, we're going to close on it and give them $5,000 at closing and cover their closing cost. The seller had this as a rental. She lives in Florida. She doesn't want this house anymore. Literally, this house is absolutely beautiful. So in this area right here, for our exit strategy, I could turn that into a rental. I could look at doing an Airbnb because it's close to Lake Erie. And it's a pretty good sized house. I think it's about 2,000 square foot house. Or for us, we're going to turn that into we're going to sell it on a lease purchase as a rent to own to a tenant buyer. And that's been our favorite strategy. So how do we find that deal? Guys, we just advertise. Okay. We advertise in Facebook groups. We run sponsored ads. You could be just putting stuff literally on your own Facebook page. So the one thing I always say too, and Jenn is a big proponent of this, is having an active Facebook page. So if I go to your Facebook page and I look at it, does it look like an avatar? Can I see even a picture of you? If you go to my Facebook page, you're going to see myself, you're going to see my wife, you're going to see what I do. It's pretty obviously that I buy and sell houses. And so what happens is, and a lot of my students, especially one in particular, I don't know what's going on in Iowa, but I've got one student in particular. She'll put a thing saying, hey guys, just let all my friends and family know that even in this market, I'm still buying houses. If anyone has a house they're looking to sell that maybe it's not listed on the market yet, I buy in any condition, reach out to me. And if you send one my way and I buy it, I pay you $1,000 as a thank you. Just that little blurb I just said. If you didn't write that down, this will be on YouTube. Literally copy and paste that. Put that on your Facebook page. And then instead of just putting that up there, honestly, what I would do is I would take a selfie of yourself, post that with that caption above. For some reason, it always pulls way more than just the caption itself. Rather it's your best selfie or you're not your best, it doesn't matter. Something's better than nothing. Okay, I don't need it to be a glamour shot. Sometimes people like a little bit more real. It's cool. Some of my pictures, I don't look my best, and sometimes I look a bit better than that, right? So it's good. It's good to be real. But we post that on there, and by having that on there, you're going to get leads, guys. You will get leads. You'll get leads from friends. You'll get leads from family members. And if you think about it, you're getting people to come work for you. Why is that? Because if you know somebody who's looking to sell their house and you send them my way and I buy, I'll pay you $1,000. If you make that message well known, there's a lot of folks who could use an extra grand in their life, right? And I will tell you, when we do that, and we need to do it again, hun, because we've done a lot of business that way, guys. So the ability, though, which we love to have in our arsenals, yes, great how to get leads, but what to do with them when you get them. Right. So we designed a script, literally a script that we ask every seller a list of questions. We call it a script. Really, all it is, it's a great list of questions. And that list of questions is what we're going to ask the seller every single time. And that's going to help us customize and tailor an offer to them. Now, what I do when I talk to a seller, I just got on a seller call right before our meeting with a seller who has a turnkey house in Naples, Florida. Beautiful area. If you don't know Naples, Florida, a lot of money down there. Her house is on like 2.5 acres. Got a beautiful ranch that's built in the 1990s. And it has the oddest thing that I've never heard before, but it has these hurricane domes. It's actually like this, like solid, I don't know if it's concrete construction or what, it's solid. And when hurricanes come through, they go inside the dome. And even if the world's, getting trashed around them, they're safe in the dome. Pretty interesting, but they have that in the property. So when I get on the phone call with a seller, I say, well, part of my job is I'm going to be collecting some information about your property. I'm going to collect that information. I'm going to run some comparables. Then I'm going to do a couple offers that are customized to your house and what you're trying to do. So one of these is going to be a cash offer where we're going to offer you all cash for your house. And the other offer I'm going to look at is going to be a seller financing option, because sometimes we could pay much more with that option too. So I'm going to come up with both of those, and I'm going to go over both those with you. I'm going to call you back in a few hours with both offers. And then if those work for you, great. What we do is we use this attorney. Once we send over the paperwork to you, you okay it. We're going to send that to the attorney. They're going to do all the title work. We're going to close whenever you want. If this doesn't work for you, I take no very well. So if it isn't a good fit for you, I'll try to see if there's a plan B that we could use. And if that doesn't work, sometimes we just refer you to a realtor if you don't already have one. But either way, if it's not a good fit for us, or if it is, we're going to try to come up with that with a quick answer for you that won't take up too much of your time. So first, we start getting some information about the property. And then what I want to do is come up with 2 offers. Now, our first offer is going to be obviously a cash offer. And that cash offer is going to be much lower than what our creative terms will be. Because part of our deal, when we ask our questions, is what do you need for the property? Not what do you want, but what do you need for it, right? So when our seller gives us a number, I'm going to look at that number. Now, usually our cash offer is not very close to that. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're right on. We've done a lot of deals where their cash offer totally made sense and we made that deal. Sometimes we have to negotiate a little bit more depending on the condition of the property. But I want to come up with a cash offer on every single one of these deals that makes sense. If it's a turnkey house and it's a beautiful neighborhood, and they want all the money for it, it's hard to give them a lowball cash offer. So sometimes what I say is, your cash offer is going to fall in this range. A lot of times that's not going to work for you folks. Sometimes it does. The other way that we can stretch to where you want to be and pay full price for your house, because a lot of our ads say that, is that we could buy it with seller financing. That means when what you're asking for your house, I think, is in the range. But what we need to do is look at the rest of the terms, see if it's a good fit for you. So typically what I do is I'll buy it for around what you're asking. And then what we would do is we'd have it closed with attorneys. And then at that point, we're going to be making payments to you directly. Or if there's a bank involved, we would pay it directly to the bank until we get you cashed out. There's a series of things they're always going to want to know. Down payment. We typically buy with no money down. There are times where, we had to do that one in South Carolina. We had to give them $5,000 down. Okay. For the folks who want 50 grand down, 200 grand down, 20% down, half down. I'm going to be nice when I say this, but beat it, not interested. Okay. So you might have somebody say that to you. I need 25% down. I could walk in a Bank of America and get a better deal than that. Right. Unless they're going to give me a 0% mortgage for the next 50 years at some ridiculously low payment, that would totally make sense. But sometimes when you're dealing with folks, just because they say yes to seller financing, that doesn't always mean it's a great deal either. So you got to make sure it's a good deal for the seller and for you as the buyer. But these are where we're going to negotiate these deals. We're going to typically try to buy with no money down. We could pay a flexible price because for us, price is important. But if I have enough time, not a 5-year balloon, not a 2-year balloon, but a 10-year, 15-year, 30-year, that's what I like. So the longer terms are the deals that we're looking for. So guys, when I'm talking about how we're going to thrive in this market, here's a big thing that I'm going to help you with. If a seller has a house right now, and I'm going to go on what's going on in Florida, because this is where we are. And all the markets around the country are different. We do business all across the country. And we've done a deal in tons of different states. So I get how it is. Everywhere's a little bit different. So I could give you a couple contrasts. In Florida, somebody bought a house in 2018 for $300,000 in the Tampa area. It's worth $650 now. Okay. If they need to sell that house cheap for $550, they could and still walk away with a couple $100,000 in equity because they've been paying on that mortgage for 4 years, right? So there are some challenges here where people are going to want a lot of money down. Don't let that mess you up. There's a lot of folks who will still do it with no money down, even on free and clear houses. So you can't put the thoughts, what's going on in your head, in the seller's head. Just because you wouldn't do that doesn't mean they won't do that. Depending on their situation, everybody's situation is different. If you heard some of the deals that we've made, you would stop second guessing it and you would just ask the right questions and just go through the process. So there's a lot of places like in the Midwest, the deal that we're doing in Pennsylvania or Ohio. So the same concept goes, if somebody bought a house in 2018 in Ohio or Pennsylvania for, especially like the middle part of Pennsylvania, not in the big cities, but some of the smaller areas, if you bought a house for $82,000 in 2018, in 2022, it's worth $87,000. It didn't go up much. So in a lot of these areas, if somebody just bought a house there, they don't have $200,000, $300,000 in spread like some of these folks down in Florida, Arizona, California, Nevada. A lot of these places where the market was just out of control the last few years, right? People are buying $50,000, $100,000 over asking, right? Institutional buyers were paying over asking to get comps in those neighborhoods higher because they own a lot of properties in those neighborhoods. Like if you hear some of these things that were going on, this market was wild for the last few years. It's going to pull back, I believe. I don't think it's going to crash. I don't think it's going to be complete chaos, but you never know. So how are we going to do these deals? I don't want to tie into any one of these creative finance deals, whether it's seller financing, whether it's a sub 2 or a wrap mortgage, or even a lease purchase, because we do all 4 of those when we're buying. I don't want to tie any one of these deals into a short term, a 2-year cash out, or where I got to pay them off in 5 years. So if I stretch right now and pay more than all of you will for these properties, I've got 15 years that if the market does take a dip, give it time to come right back. So what are your best friends during these markets? Getting into cash flowing properties with as little money down as possible, not personally guaranteeing the debt by being able to buy them on a wrap mortgage or sub 2 or seller financing, and getting to a long term with the seller. Somebody that wants to get you cashed out in 2 years, guys, unless you're getting a phenomenal deal discount on it, I'm not doing that. And I will pass on those deals all the time. And in some situations, guys, where if it just doesn't make sense and they want $500,000 for their $500,000 home, your cash flow a little bit of money on it, but they want to get cashed out in 6 months, like I'm not doing that deal. I'm not going to do it. Pass. And we pass on those deals all the time. So once again, terms, long term will be your best friend. No money down, cash flowing properties. These are the strategies that we're implementing. All of our fix and flips that we're working on or going to plan on be working on. Any one of these deals, guys, we're in and out of them as fast as can be. We've got one I'll start sharing with you guys when we close on it next month in St. Pete. I'm not even doing a fix and flip. It's a complete handyman special wholesale deal. We bought it. We're going to close on it. And instead of closing on it and doing all the fix and flips, I'm going to clean it all out. Just take the stuff that's left behind. And I'm going to list it on the MLS with a realtor, because that's probably going to be your biggest buyers list. I'm still going to offer it a big discount. And somebody's going to be able to get into that deal and still be able to buy it, rehab it, and either make some money on it or turn it into a home. And it's in a hot part of St. Pete. And it's in an area where it's a very entry level home. So I'm not getting into the high stuff. A lot of your high end stuff, I think, is going to take your biggest hit first. And I've already started to see that. So if you're looking at any high end properties, those would be the ones I'd be the most leery of in these next couple months, these next couple years, right? Are going to be those big, expensive high end homes. The one that I think Jenn and I, correct me if I'm wrong, hon, but the majority of our houses that we've done are all those 1,500 square foot entry level homes, not the big house on the hill, not the huge swanky. I mean, we do have a couple of those underneath our belt that are pretty nice, but the majority of them are just your average neighbor's house.
Yeah, I would say a lot of them are like perfect for first time home buyers. So it's like sweet entry level where it's not overly done. We have had a few bigger ones, like you said, but most of them are just ready to move in and have your first starter home.
Well, and I think too, somebody goes and they get married, they go to buy their first home. They don't really care if the market's hot or if it's cold. They're looking to buy their first home, right? But they're not going to go out and buy that gigantic house yet. So most of the time, doesn't matter if the market is hot or cold, those entry level homes are still pretty safe. And then I think for that same market, if people are going to downsize, they want that smaller home. As long as they're done nice, guys, those things seem to go really quickly, especially with our rent to own program. They go very fast. So I want to kind of dive into a couple of the questions that I saw that we had. Any other questions that you guys might have, drop them in there too. So kind of recap real quick on some of these strategies. And we're in a lot of mastermind groups. We're around a lot of investors, and they share a lot of the tips that they're doing right now. So I see a lot of folks going to novations, but I see the market kind of cooling off a little bit. But I think novations is another technique to do. We have never done one. So I'm going to be completely transparent with you. We have never done one. We've done some very similar where we just close on it, buy it, and then put it on the market right away. I like controlling the title more. So when it is time to go to closing, if a seller finds out that we're selling their house for how much, they could get greedy. And I've heard a lot of situations where sellers are starting to put their foot down and don't want to go to closing because they find out how much money you're going to make. You got to renegotiate. It's a lot of different stuff. Either way, I see a lot of people transitioning to novations, but creative finance, how we're able to buy these deals with either, like I said, a wrap mortgage or subject to, that's going to be, I think, the biggest key, because we're finding cash flowing properties that we're able to get for literally a handful of thousands of dollars out of pocket. And we never have to go to the bank. We never have to ask a bank, okay? And literally every deal of ours are almost like less than 10 grand to get into. Plus we have to pay our team and good stuff like that because we have a team of us. But you want to get into some questions on?
Yeah, absolutely. So Phil's asking, what are you doing with these properties all across the country? I
Uh,
think we're talking about buying them all over, how the market is shifting, how Florida is kind of its own animal down here.
Yeah, I will tell you, Florida is definitely a crazy animal. So what we are doing, great question, is in a lot of states, we are going to keep them. In a lot of states that make sense, especially landlord friendly states. Although New York State is not a landlord friendly state, that's where we all first started. We live in Florida now, but we started in New York. So we still have a lot of deals in New York. But our process of rent to own, I think makes even in landlord unfriendly states a lot more friendly for us.
Absolutely.
If somebody's going to give you 10, 20, $30,000 down, which is a non-refundable option deposit, that's the best kind of security I have. It's better than the first month's rent, right? That's our money to spend. You will get tax on it. Your account is income, but it's going to go towards the purchase if they're ready to buy. For folks who do rent to own and they get 2 grand down, 3 grand down, well, then you're going to run into problems, right? You're never going to get them cashed out. But this is also the part of it too, because I saw one of these questions by Philip. How are we managing them? So our exit strategy is that rent to own lease purchase, because part of our management is we are not responsible for the maintenance. We are not responsible for the repairs. We're not responsible for the utilities. And if somebody gives us $20,000 down to move into the property and we let them know off the beginning, they're able to treat this like home, and you'll never hear from us. You'll never hear boo from us as long as you treat the property good. We don't get calls from the neighbors that there's like raging parties or crazy stuff going on at the property, which really, I mean, knock on wood, we're pretty good about that. But the number two thing is you got to pay us rent on time. As long as you pay us on time, you'll never hear from us. So they manage the properties themselves. If they have a leaky faucet, they call a plumber, not us. If they have a plugged toilet, they're going to go call a plumber, not us. If they have, like we have one family, they want to put a new kitchen in their house. Like they're going to go call a contractor and put a new kitchen in the house, especially because that kitchen was a little bit dated. So that situation works out well. Now, for that being the case, I don't have to have management all in one spot, or every time we find a new house, go find a new manager, project or property manager in that area. To the point though, we will have somebody in-house probably managing a lot of it for us, like collection and things like this, but that's how we manage that now. So the exit strategy we use is a lease purchase. So we like the lease purchase, and especially the reason why lease purchase is our favorite, that rent to own model, is because we still retain ownership of the property. We can write off depreciation. If our buyer doesn't buy or they default, getting the property back is really easy. And I'll give you an example. We had one just this spring. They gave us $10,000 to move in the house a couple of years ago. He says, well, I'm getting my job transferred to Arizona. I'm out. You guys get the house back. I know I'm not getting my money back. I said, well, if you leave it nice and clean, we'll at least give you $1,000 to help you with the U-Haul. He says, sweet. We gave him $1,000 back because they were great people, but we weren't entitled to, and they knew it. So they left the house in good shape. We gave them $1,000 back. Long story short, if that was a seller finance deal, we'd have to quit claim the deed house, the property back to us. Getting the house back is a little bit trickier, things like that. So I love the lease purchase model. Now, when we install our new tenant buyer, how much did the new tenant buyer give us?
I think it was 18.
18,000 move in. So we collect another check for 18,000. So if you think about it, guys, in 2 years, that's like $28,000 of money that we've collected that if you were renting this property, you would have never collected. Plus the monthly cash flow. When obviously when we resold the property, because of the market condition, the property price went up, the rent went up, right? So we did considerably better from that happening. So what's the worst case scenario? If you do get a property back, you're going to charge more for it generally and put another tenant buyer in there. So this is our favorite exit strategy. To be honest with you guys, if we're going to do holding a property, that is our only exit strategy we could do. And not the only one we can do.
One rental and never again.
And the only reason why we did that as a rental,
Yeah.
because we bought that with a 0% mortgage with seller financing. And I didn't want a tenant buyer to move in there and get us cashed out in 1 year. That defeat the whole purpose of that 0% mortgage. But now it's, different story. But yeah, having one rental is the only one that we get the calls on or things like that. One of our properties, we got a letter from the town.
Oh, I muted you.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
We got a call from the town saying they did a walkthrough inspection and they come to find out that the folks living in the house had a basement. They had it partially finished. You could tell that maybe like the kids were hanging out down there, couches, stuff like that. They said, with that being the case, you have to put an egress window in there. It's like $5,000. Well, we told our tenant buyer, if you're going to be putting kids down there doing whatever, you need to go put in that $5,000 window. And they did it. We didn't have to pay for that. They did. So another reason why I love this lease purchase is because these people, they've been living there since 2017. And they're great tenant buyers. We never hear boo from them. They always pay on time. And that's fantastic. So once again, this lease purchase, the rent to own model. And here's the flip side of it, guys. For when folks do make it through the process, and some do, not all, and it's not our fault because we give them the opportunity. They, for some reason, don't. But for the ones who do, we literally turned a renter into a homeowner, which is pretty cool. And I know all of you are thinking, oh no, I got rid of one of my houses, right? Well, the one that we are doing right now, we're about to get pretty close to a 6-figure check. So if it's the worst case scenario, it's not that terrible, right? But here's the thing is we want to be able to buy more of these houses. And this is why we love this creative finance, because back in the day, when we were buying them all, going to a bank, borrowing and doing all of those things, you could only buy so many at a time so quickly, right? That money only moves so fast. If we want to buy 10 deals next month, we can, right? We just have to find the right 10 deals to buy. So these are the facts of why I don't mind having that happen, even if they do.
Yeah, tons of great questions. I'm going to try to stick on this topic before we move to another one real quick. So the lease options with large down payments, are you still able to capitalize on depreciation?
Absolutely. You still own the property. You're still the owner of the property. That is a non-refundable option deposit that gets executed when they're time to buy. So what happens is you spend that money, it's yours, you spend it, okay? We could put that into another deal. You could put that into some marketing. You could do whatever. You could take your spouse out to dinner, take your mom out. But what's going to happen is you still own that property until your tenant buyer is at the closing line. So for all of those years while they're renting, you still own it. You're still writing off depreciation. You still get all of the benefits of you owning the property because you still do. You have a tenant in there who's renting it, but that tenant is not a typical tenant because the quality of the tenant is much better than a typical renter because these folks have the intention to owning this house down the road. And we make sure they know that this is a special privilege, that you just can't find these deals anywhere. So don't mess up this opportunity. And you'll still run into some goofball knuckleheads that will mess it up for one reason or another, just like anything else. And if you do, just like having a bad tenant, you either remove them and get them evicted or buy them out of the house and put in another one and keep the process moving.
Yeah, but I will say out of the majority, even especially with COVID, anyone who did get behind, they worked really hard to get themselves caught up because they truly are invested in this home. It's not just a property to them. And we saw a lot of people be able to do that. They were quite a bit behind when the whole thing happened. And, they're still well on their way to home ownership. We just say, you have to pay on time from here on out because, you had this happen, but they take it really seriously. So those who are invested in owning this home do make it happen.
So I think that's what really cuts down on us. We don't have any of the maintenance calls. We don't have any of those kind of issues. Once in a while you have a late pay, but that's really about it. And then sometimes down the road, you'll have somebody say that my lease is up, and then we renew it or renew figures. We'll review them and still make sure they get a good deal, but there's an increase in taxes or insurance or whatever. We could do an increase there. Obviously we could change the price as well if they haven't bought it out in that term, but we never kick people out who are good payers. So
yeah, one of those questions was, do we do a 5-year term? Is that what we propose?
Nope. I'll help you there. So if you write up a 5-year lease, Right, you're tied to these people for a 5-year lease. Okay, so what we do is don't do that. We typically like to do for a year and then give them the right to renew it every year, right? But it's based on, obviously, they're paying rent. So for example, we did have some scoundrels who gave us a bunch of money to move into one of our properties, made one payment, and then didn't pay again. And I don't know why you'd give somebody like 10, 12 grand and then first month's rent and then just not pay. And then like, obviously now you've got to go through evictions. But if I gave them like a 5-year lease or a 3-year lease, that gives me a lot more ties to these people. So I write it as a year lease with the option to renew it. And I'll continue to renew that as long as they're paying on time. But I don't want to be tied into a 5-year lease with them. I'll keep going. I'll renew it 5 years. I'll renew it 6 years as long as they're paying on time. But I don't want that first initial one to be 5 years because we have one of those too right now. And the hard thing about it is what happens when I have to change the rent, because rents went way up in the last 5 years, didn't they? My man's cooking in that house for like another year and a half, I think, at that super low rent price, making out like a bandit. The only way he could get that house cheaper is if he came to our house with a gun and a mask and stole it from us, because it's a bargain at that price. So, however, if you tie yourself into that 5-year lease, that also doesn't give you the ability to start changing the price if it goes up or down, mostly if it goes up, and it doesn't give you the ability to change the rent if you get an insurance bill and your insurance changed or your taxes changed, or there was this change and you need to make a difference or make a change to your rent. You can't do that. So I hope that answers that question.
So the contract for deed is coming up. Do you lease with an option to contract for deed or lease with an option to buy?
We lease with the option to buy. So that means when you're ready to buy it, you're going to have to go to a bank, get a mortgage, and we're going to use whatever money that you gave us. It's typically close to 10% down. We never say 10% down, but that's the ideal number. We're looking for that or plus. But if you tell somebody 10%, that's all they're going to get. And the more you get down, the better the odds are of getting them approved. So always make sure you get the most possible. We've got $30,000 down, guys, on a $110,000 house. If I told her I needed 10% down, I would have got 11. Now I got 30. Now, when she's able to qualify for a mortgage down the road, do you think it's a little easier to get her bought with 30 grand versus 11? Sure is, right? Much easier for the debt to income to fall in line, the payment to income to fall in line. All those things will make it much, much easier the more money down. So that's why we never ask for 10%, but that's the ideal target for that or plus where we're aiming for. Because by the time you add in your closing costs, you add in all the appraisals, all the first year of insurance that they're going to need. You're going to need the first year of property taxes up front, and then the 3.5% down for FHA, 5% for conventional, or however much they need. Once you start adding all that together, it's pretty close to 10%. So make sure when you go to the closing table, they have enough, because nothing is worse than getting somebody in this property for all these years. They get all the things fixed with their credit or whatever held them back, and the mortgage person says, you're ready to go. And you're like, you only need $8,700 more. And they don't
have it. Like that's the biggest takeaway is, they'll say they'll have it, but they won't. And so it sounds weird, like to take all this money up front, but you're honestly protecting them to be able to make sure that they can get qualified later on down the road. A question kind of going along with that. Are you using a mortgage loan officer to qualify your prospective tenants? If so, do you pay the loan officer anything? And that was from Trace.
Trace, great question. No, we don't. We have something super awesome though. And you guys might write this down. It's called screenthetenant.com. Screenthetenant.com is a service that we use. They're out of Pittsburgh. They work for anybody nationwide. So what happens with screenthetenant.com, we get a link. And if we did an interview with Paul, who's the owner, we share that in our group, but we did an interview. He gives you a personalized link. When I have a tenant buyer who's interested in one of our properties, I send them the link. They fill it out. They enter in their credit card information. They pay the application fee. I don't even have to touch the money. It goes right to the Paul services. So now what happens is they send in, it's a $50 per applicant. And Jen and I used to handwrite the application, and then her and I would pay the $50 per head, submit the application, and then our tenant buyers would ghost us and they'd disappear. I'm like, where these people go? I thought you wanted the house. You submitted an application. No, they changed their mind. $100 down the drain. We did that too many times before we realized, okay, send them the link, let them fill out the application, let them pay for it. With that personalized link, you get the results. Paul and his team send you a 70-page report that goes
Literally.
over debt to income, payment to income, credit report, criminal report, sex offender. Can they run the mile in under 6 minutes? No, I'm kidding, that last part. But
Every
they go,
email they've ever registered with and every screen name they might have. So you can definitely do some due diligence there.
yeah, all their social media accounts are on there, all their email accounts on there. And then, so it saves you from running through the 70 pages. It gives you a snapshot of it all in about 2 paragraphs. And as long for me is that 2 paragraphs, everything seems to check out well, right? I've done my due diligence. I'm going to make sure we had proof of income because they get all that stuff. There's copies of their credit reports in there. And I'll be honest with you guys, if your credit score is a 490, I don't care. It's going to blow your minds. I don't care. If your credit score is a 550, I don't care. Because what I look at, I was in the car business for 20 years in the finance office. I dealt with all the banks helping people get loans. What I look at is people, good people, a lot of times have something bad happen to them, right? It could be a divorce, it could be a death in the family, it could be an illness, right? They could have had something happen to them where their credit took a big hit. And I've seen a lot of people who are a 500 credit score, who are previously 800s, who had a situation happen to them and they took a big hit, but they're on the way back up. Okay. I've seen too many of these situations happen. Now, if you are a career credit criminal and your whole time on life is like you just constantly messed up and never paid anybody on time, well, that's a problem, right? Sometimes those people turn into adults and straighten themselves up. Got a couple of buddies who are like that, right? Now one of them, he brags he's an 800 credit score and brags about it all the time. Before he couldn't buy a pencil. Now he can. But that's the case, guys. So I look at credit score, but what's most important to me is their income and their debt. Do they have a lot of debt? Do they have a high income? Because if you have the ability to pay me, that's what my biggest concern is. Do you have some stuff on your credit where they medical bills or they're 15 repos where you just don't like paying your bills on time? Because if you had some medical bills and some medical collections and things like that, I'm willing to overlook that, guys, especially if you have a high income and Paul's team checks everything out and you're not an axe murderer and all this other good stuff, right? So it could be a great fit for us. So we have that background check done for them. Paul gives us the report. After that, we do have a mortgage guy we put them in touch with. When our buyers are ready to buy, Paul's team also offers credit restoration. Now, Paul is a real estate investor, so they don't just fix their credit, they get them mortgage ready. So that's the difference why we really like Paul. So Paul's team will enroll them in credit and ask every one of them if they want to, and they do a great job. Now, flip side, 9 months later, a year later, if they stayed enrolled or if they didn't, I don't force them to enroll. And to be honest with you guys, some of our rent-owned buyers have 700 credit scores. Some of them are just self-employed and they got great credit. Some of them have relocated and they've got great credit and they need time on the new job. So I'm not talking about everybody, but when I say some of the credit folks, right, they have some challenges. And if that's the case, we give them that time to get it fixed. So as far as that goes, if you could pay us on time and take good care of the property, we'll give you the time to get your life in order to get you down that finish line. And then when we do, we found a mortgage guy that we really like, who does a great job, who makes the buyout process really easy and doesn't torture myself, especially doesn't torture my wife too badly to get all these documents that we need. So when it comes time to getting a mortgage, we give the stuff over to him. 30 days later, our buyer is signing the paperwork for the house that they've already been living in. So it is pretty exciting. We've had a lot of great testimonials or reviews from people who've been through the process, who are now homeowners who absolutely loved it. And it is pretty cool. The one thing they say it's always kind of weird is when you go to the closing table and you sign for the paperwork for a house that you've been living in for like the last 4 years. And then you go home and he's like, yeah, well, we went out to dinner and had a beer, but it wasn't like we just bought the new house and we just moved into it. He's like, our stuff's already been there. So it's a lot easier having to move in that weekend. But great question.
All right, I'm gonna scroll back up here. One, I think it was Kenny, does a percentage of the rent go towards the renter's down payment if he or she decides to purchase?
Kenny, great question. So no, it doesn't. But yes, it does. I know it sounds super confusing, right? You're like, what the hell? So to answer your question, none of the rent goes towards their down payment, but anything they pay above the rent will get added to their non-refundable option deposit. So the neat thing about us, we try to keep our rent in the range that most people could afford it as possible, because this is going to attract the most amount of people. I still need a cash flow X amount, but I think of it as the car business, guys. When you came and bought a truck from us or a car from us, you didn't, yeah, you looked at the price. But if I could sell you an $80,000 Tahoe for $299 a month, you don't care how much that Tahoe costs. Your payment was $299 a month, right? And that's what the biggest thing for them. So I don't want to price these monthly rents to where they're out of control. So what we do is we price it fair, market value. I hear a lot of folks say we charge way more for rent to own because, you know, they want to own it someday, blah, blah, blah. What we do is we want to make sure we're making X amount per door, and we do very well with that. The neat thing is I don't have management. I don't have to set anything aside for CapEx, although we still do. The neat thing about it is, though, anything that you pay above your monthly rent will get added to your down payment. So if the rent in the area calls for $1,300, guys, I don't charge $1,500. I charge $1,300 for the property, and then anything they pay above that gets added to their non-refundable option deposit. So we do ask every single time we're installing a tenant buyer, the same thing, guys. It's like on our script, and I'll rehearse it for you because I could always use the practice, but it's a good thing to ask 100% of the time. Hey, Philip, a lot of our tenant buyers, when they move in, they like to pay a little bit extra on top of their rent every month because it gets added to their down payment. I've got some folks who like to spend $200 to $300 a month over every month because they love seeing their account grow. And then I have some folks who spend $800 to $1,000 a month over their rent every month because they want their down payment to grow quickly. So what's the most you could afford over the monthly rent for your down payment? Philip's going to say, what do you think, honey? Do you think we could do 200? I think I could do that. Well, let's do $200. Now that rent went from 1,300 to 1,500 and they got to choose. So now I say, I'm going to write this up that the rent's 15 or 1,300, but you're going to pay 1,500, and that extra $200 is going to go towards your non-refundable option deposit. So every year of you doing that, that's another $2,400. We go over the scenario with that like in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, on top of what you're already putting in, and then we could back into it that way.
And a lot of them do exercise that option. They like seeing that account grow. And it's really important that they stay consistent with it. So you want to make that very clear as well. Otherwise, the bank might not recognize it. So, you know, it's extra cash flow on your part, but also if they just stop paying it midway, you know, it's important to remind them that that won't count towards it. So.
And we do have some that legit pay like 800 or 1,000 over. We cash flow so well on these rent to own properties, where sometimes for a lot of investors, some of these deals are too tight because they add in management fees. They set 10% for repairs, which we don't handle repairs. So when you could take out the management fees, when I could take out the 10% for the repairs and things like that and vacancies, I collect $20,000 down to move in. So I have wiggle room on my monthly spread now because I don't have those other two fees against it. Now that my tenant buyer pays $200 or $300 a month over that, that's how we're creating these win-win situations for that monthly cash flow, guys. So I don't know many people who cash flow monthly per property like we do. And I'm not trying to brag, but because we don't have these other expenses and because we utilize the strategy that we learned, this is what's been helping us tremendously. So these are some of the reasons why I love rent to own. Next thing too is, you know, if we have a house that's $150,000 home and these folks aren't going to buy it for 2 years or whatever that time frame is, you know, I'm going to anticipate that house might be worth more in the future. So I'm going to price it accordingly too. If it's worth 150 today and they're going to get into a 2-year term with me, it's going to be probably worth more than 2 years. So I'm going to price that accordingly because it might be 175, it might be 179, it might be 189, depending on where I live. It might be 200, depending on where I live, right? And depending on what's going on in that market. But I will say, everybody's like, well, what happens if it doesn't appraise? Sometimes you got too little down, so make sure you get that big down payment. Sometimes you didn't collect over per month. So make sure you get that because that adds up over time. And then the last thing is, guys, you could always go down. You could drop the price if you had to, but you can't go back up. So make sure you price it accordingly, because I'll tell you what, a lot of times when we would have a new house that we'd put rent to own, my wife and I would have a discussion about it. And the discussion would go that she thinks that I was asking too much for the property. My side of the discussion goes that I think I'm asking enough, if not too little. So we'd have a disagreement, that's called, guys. And that's okay. That's what happens when you have disagreements with your business partner. Just so happens to be my wife. They did the
And
way that
I will admit I was wrong. And one property on a street named Clark Ave comes to mind.
every one of them, I kind of want to slightly throw up in my mouth a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's why, once again, guys, we make sure we don't write it for a 5-year term. So we do have the option to review the numbers every certain couple of years, right? And we tell our tenant buyers that if you are out by then, it's not the end of the world, guys. But we're going to revisit the numbers. We'll still make sure you get a good deal, but we're not going to throw you to the streets. Don't expect that to ever happen. As long as you pay us on time to take good care of the property. If you need to rent on this thing for 10 years before you're ready, like we can give you that time.
Yeah, as long as you have the term length from however you're purchasing it, then you have that flexibility. And that's what we really love. And that's why Joe's always really saying, make sure you get a long-term length from your sellers, because this way you have this, cushion.
Right. So when somebody says, I will do seller financing, but I want to get cashed out in 1 year or 2 years, if I put in a tenant buyer, that's putting our backs against the wall, putting too much pressure on the market and everything else going on. So these are why the deals that we love to keep, those 10-year minimum. So if my tenant buyer doesn't get me bought out in 5, 6, 7 years, guys, like, I'm good. Right. I'm good. The market takes a little bit of a dip, gives me time to get it back. I'm still good. Right. So these are these situations that we love.
We got a ton of good questions coming in. Cindy's asking, do they ever suggest using that money towards purchasing a different home?
What up, Cindy? Just want to say hi. Yes. So we've had times where they see another one of our rent to own properties available and they want to play hot potato and jump from one to the next. And I will be honest with you, Cindy, we do our very best to keep them planted right where they are. Because I guess the situation could be different depending on, maybe it fit their family really well and the house they were getting out of was in a really good spot. But generally speaking, we generally try to keep them right where they are. So we'll have a lot of new properties that come across, and our rent to own buyers follow us on social media and they'll see a new deal come across the screen. Like, oh, well, can I, use my down payment, move out of the house we're in into that one? I nicely have to say no.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Curtis was asking, how do you determine sale price if they want to buy third-party CMA? I know you kind of touched on this.
How do I determine the price CMA?
Not sure what CMA meant.
Curtis, if you're still here, can you pop that in there just so I make sure I answer the question right? And if they want to buy at a time when the price market is low. Okay, so if they want to buy and the market is low, so for an example, we put somebody in their rent to own.
Comparable market analysis, you mean?
Yes, sorry. So give an example on Nunda Boulevard. Okay, so we did that deal. We ended up buying it we got it for a pretty good deal. We put a tenant buyer in on that property at $490 or $399. They gave us 30 grand down. So legit, they need a mortgage for what? Probably 370, 375 with closing costs, maybe a little bit more than that. The estimate value on that property was probably in the low 4s. If I had to guess, when the market started peaking even higher. And then if you look right now on Zillow, we could say the property is worth probably 360. First of all, that's Zillow. Okay. And I don't ever go by Zillow, but say if that's were to happen and our tenant buyer says, hey, I'm ready to buy right now. Right. We have a couple options. Obviously, if it doesn't appraise, it did appraise for that once they were ready to buy, and we could keep the price accordingly, let them stay in there for a little bit longer until the market circles back. I could drop my price if I have that flexibility and I want to get them cashed out. But to be quite honest with you, I'm going to want to give it more time, right? And I'm going to give it as much time as we need. And if they have more money to get it bought, maybe they came up with another $30,000 and they have the money, even if it didn't meet appraisal. So once again, I'm a very big proponent of making sure you get as much money down as you possibly can, because from what I've seen, the most amount of failure from people doing this business model is they sell a $250,000 home. Jen and I am going for $25,000 down, but if you got 20, would take it because you're going to probably chance or pay a couple $100 a month over anyways. But the challenge is when somebody sees that same deal and they get desperate for any tenant buyer who's got $5,000. Now you've got $5,000. They're never going to get closing costs 3.5% down and all the other stuff. And you're just wasting your time. And then sometimes those folks will say, I'm going to come into money down the road. But if you all been in this business long enough, you know how that goes. That money that's coming on down the road, for some reason, don't come down the road. Once in a while, blind squirrel finds a nut, but majority of the time, they never find that money. So if the market is turning back, we give them more time to buy.
Nice. So one question I kept seeing a lot is, where is this money going? When people are giving us the non-refundable option deposit, when they're paying over their rent each month, how are we keeping track of said money?
So great questions. First of all, y'all, that goes in your bank account. Okay.
Yeah.
That is your money. So your accountant will tax you on that as income. It is yours to spend. It's all non-refundable. Every dollar they give you is not going back to your tenant buyer. So where does that money go for us? First of all, we collect monthly rent through digital banking. So we have a track record every single month of exactly what they've paid us. So if they've made 48 payments, which are 4 years, and they've done 200 over, I know exactly how much I've got, $9,600 sitting there, right? So I get that 9,600 plus the 20 grand they gave us. I know I've got 29,600 as a credit for them to close. You don't have to come up to close with that check, guys. You don't have to show up to closing with that money. Like, oh, here's the money they gave me. So here's what you do. When you collect that first non-refundable option deposit at closing, we have them do it with an attorney. They don't do it with us. They pay for that closing at an attorney's office, usually about $300-400. I don't want to collect that money, and I don't want to be the one signing them up for that. We have an attorney do that to make sure they've gone all over the paperwork accordingly. They're really just signing up a lease with an attorney with a second option to buy, but I'd rather them do it so they don't feel like they're coerced, pressured, forced, or didn't have a clear understanding. Not only that, if it goes backwards, the deal, and you had to go to court, what better witness to have on your side as in a lawyer that signed the paperwork? So if they say they didn't know what they were signing, I didn't even do it. I wasn't even there. They did it with the attorney. Attorney is going to be the one in question of what happened, right? So once we do receive that check, where does that go? Counts as income, guys. So what we do is we use that to get into other deals. So what I see happen is when I bought that deal with seller finance, the seller needed $5,000 down. We needed $4,000 in closing costs. I needed $1,000 insurance policy because I bought that property sub 2. I bought on a wrap mortgage or whatever. I got $10,000 out of pocket. I set aside 3 monthly payments of say $1,000 a piece because I know it's going to take me 3-4 months to find the right tenant buyer. And I budget that in there. So if I need $13,000 plus some utilities in the meantime, I'm going to set aside that much money when I buy that deal. When I get my tenant buyer and they give me the $20,000 to move in, I've just paid myself back the money. I'm up $7,000 in that situation and I'm cash flowing monthly. So ideally for us, I like to use the same money to get in and out of projects constantly. So what we avoid having to do by using this as our exit strategy, so any money that we put out, we get that right back. That prevents us from having to partner with money lenders who are taking a portion of our spread, right? And I'm not saying partners are bad, but you do hear of nightmares with partners, right? And I'm saying there's probably tons of successful partnerships too. But if I could avoid having to do that, I prefer it. If I could avoid having to use other people's money because I utilize this strategy, great. There's a lot of folks who love using other people's money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the strategy that we love to use is if I'm going to dish out 10, 15 grand to buy a deal with creative finance, I'm getting that 10, 20 grand, 30 grand right back on a non-refundable option deposit. So the best of all worlds happened for us. We've got no money tied into the deal. We don't have any credit tied into the deal. I'm not using my credit. It's not personally guaranteed to me. We're cash flowing on it. And then if any of these folks buy the house out down the road, we get a nice back end check. And if not, there are occasions where we resell the property a handful of times before we find the right tenant buyer.
Awesome. So I think just to clarify about the property price, that if they don't purchase the property within their lease, then you as the owner have the right to be flexible with that purchase price.
So I'll give you an example, just so if everybody wants to know, we have one going on right now. We sold them the house in 2017 for 110. After that, they're on month to month. It's been more than enough time. They're ready to buy the house. The house now is worth 155, 160, probably 160, 165. It's a nice house. So what we did, said, okay, if you're ready to buy, we've not changed rent at all. We kept it low. We honestly could charge much more for rent. I could even charge much more for the house, but I'm not going to. We sold that for 155 to them. So when they say we're ready to buy, it's okay, your price now is 155. Let's move forward. And they're saying so happy because at 155, it's still a good deal for them. For us, it's a great deal. So if I lose my 400 and something dollars per month in cash flow, but you get that nice check at the end, it's not terrible, right? I'm going to use that proceeds of that deal, paying some taxes to Uncle Sam, put a little bit of money, take my wife out shopping maybe, but majority of that money is going to go right back into more marketing. It's going to go back into making more deals. And I think as this market is starting to change, and when I would talk to somebody 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, and I would try to explain to them the benefits of using seller financing, a lot of them would say, no, I'm just going to list it on the market. I'm going to have it sold this weekend, and it's going to probably sell for over asking because that's what my realtor was telling me. And then they did, and it did, and they got all that money. That was great a year ago, guys. That was great 2 years ago. It is not the same right now. So with all those proceeds that we're getting, I see the opposite of that happening. My realtor doesn't do a good job. Well, your realtor did a great job a year ago when the market was really easy, but realtors haven't had to work a whole lot the last couple of years. They put a house on the market, take some great photos. It's a lot of work. I'm not discounting that, but it was a lot easier than it typically has before. Now it's hard. And the minute your house isn't selling, the seller always thinks that my realtor stinks.
Yeah, and that was a question too, is that I remembered somebody was asking here that, in this crazy market now that is changing, how are you approaching realtors, or, because you mentioned that we can find them on the MLS. So what are some conversations that folks watching can be having?
All right, I'm going to give you guys a tip that I just told my acquisition manager last night. And she was like, oh my God, I didn't do that. So I'm going to give you guys all a good tip too. Link up if you don't have a realtor in your area. Get with a realtor in your area. They could set you up on an automatic email list. Now tell them that you're looking for whatever counties that you're looking in or whatever areas. I try to go by counties and say, I want to get emailed every seller property that has owner finance or seller finance in it. You'd be shocked. Go into Redfin or Zillow and look for houses that are currently for sale and type in owner finance. You'll see tons of red dots all over the country, guys, of houses that right in the description say, I will take seller finance, that are listed with a realtor right now. Flip side of that, go to for sale by owner houses on Zillow and find even a ton more that are the same way. Owner finance, and then a separate search for the word seller finance. Both of those work well. Both will have different results. Some will say will not accept seller finance or owner finance. Some of those will. Majority of them, I'd say probably 85% in round range, say they are doing seller finance somewhere in there. There's a ton of leads, guys, right there for you. Also, too, I'd be reaching out to any realtors, and any deal that I'm going to look at that's been on the market for a long time. The first thing I do, if I find a property that's been on the market, nice turnkey house, I look at when it was bought last. And if it was bought in under like the 12-month range and it's on the market now and it's pretty close to what they bought it for, there's no spread there. I bought it for $300,000 in April and I'm selling it in October for $325,000. It doesn't say owner finance, guys, but it's been on the market now for 3 months. I'm calling that lead. Because chances are somebody bought that house in April. Something happened. They can't afford it. They bought it for $300,000. They got it down to $325,000 right now. They're trying to sell it 9 months later. It's been on the market for 90 days and it's not moving. right? I'm calling the realtor on that situation and just say, hey, I'm looking at a few investment properties in the area, and this one came across my screen. Can you tell me what's going on with this property? I saw they just bought it in April. Are they selling it so quick? Is there a problem with the house? Then the realtor is going to tell you, this is what's going on. You find out about the situation. They got a job transfer, this and all the different scenarios. Here's the one mistake I will tell you that even our own team makes. I wouldn't tell the realtor that I'm going to buy the property subject to, or I'm going to buy it with a wraparound mortgage, because most of the time, not even a realtor understands what that means. And I just saw it the other day. My team says, oh, we could buy that with creative finance. The realtor is like, what do you mean creative finance? They don't get that stuff. Not all of them. Some of them might, but not everybody does. And we're talking in terms that they don't get. So what happens when you think the realtor gets told that is something they're not familiar with? No, that won't work. Of course they say that, right? So I say I have a couple options. I think I can make this work. Let's get on a call. The way I would buy that is with seller financing, which means once we agree on that price, I would take over their existing mortgage. It's like assuming the mortgage, but without having to go through all the assumption paperwork. Sometimes they're very familiar with that, right? Or like a land contract where I'm taking over their old payment. I try to explain it to them in such basic terms, it doesn't overcomplicate it. And that's what I want to try not to do. So don't talk to a realtor and say, I'm going to buy it with creative financing. It's going to be a no. Okay. But when I see these situations of somebody just bought it a year ago and they're selling it for pretty close to what they bought it for, I'm calling every one of those. Then I'm going to have them set me up on an automatic email blast for every house that hits the market that's available with seller financing. So now what I do, I get those emails. When I see that email come through and I see a price drop besides, oh, I know I got a motivated seller. Here's the other thing I'm going to tell y'all. If I find a deal looking on Zillow, or I type in owner financing, I find one in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I pull up the property and it says, we'll do seller financing with 20% down. And I look at this listing, it's 124 days old. I know I'm not going to do 20% down, but maybe after the last 4 months, maybe they have a little bit of a change of heart, right? So maybe somebody who says they want to do 20% down, maybe they're okay with doing 5% down or 0% down. So I'm still going to call that, especially because it's been sitting on the market for 100 plus days. If any of them just hit the market, I try not to be that guy, right? I'm not going to be the one running up on there kind of just like, hey, I want to buy your house right away. Maybe we miss opportunities that way. Maybe we do, right? But there's also so many other ways to attract leads. So you can only get to one thing at a time, right? But some of the ones that just hit the market, sometimes they kind of, I let them weather the storm a little bit because sometimes they're more flexible. So these are a lot of the ways that we're doing it. You got any good questions? Any more questions?
Yeah, they're all great questions. Did you talk about structuring the deal with the seller has to pay the realtor?
So if we buy with no money down, you're going to pay closing costs and pay the realtor. So we're going to negotiate with that realtor what their commission might be. Because a lot of times what's going to happen is the realtor is going to say, well, we want 10% down because they want their 6% commission and they want the 4% to cover closing costs and whatever else. So when I'm having that conversation with the seller, or I'm sorry, with the realtor, I explain to them, hey, I could pay more than anybody else can. The way I would stretch is I'd buy it with seller financing. I'm going to cover all your seller's closing costs. I'm going to pay you a commission. It's not going to be the full 6%, but if the house has been sitting on the market for 4 months, believe me, that realtor wants that thing off their back. Their seller's been probably breaking their chops for 3 out of those 4 months of why isn't my house sold yet, right? So that realtor might also be a little bit more motivated to work with you as well. Now, we have bought creative deals off the MLS. We have. And you negotiate with that realtor. And when you come to closing, because we bought that deal with no money down, we had to come to closing with the commission and closing costs. I think the total is like $7,000, $8,000 maybe. I think it was like $7,700 right off the MLS. The seller reached out to us in that
I was
scenario.
gonna say though, yeah, we didn't go to the MLS on that one. They found us because their house wasn't selling and she was moved out, couldn't afford the 2 payments anymore, and was really in the need to get this thing moved.
It was a turnkey house. I don't think we did any, well, that's the only had to do some piping stuff to the outside of it after the town did their smoke inspection or something.
Pennsylvania, yeah.
Pennsylvania. only some parts of Pennsylvania, they make you do like a smoke test to like the sewers or some weird stuff. You learn as you're in all these new places, right? But the deal makes sense and it's a great deal for us. So I love that
Yeah,
house.
but just taking some time and again, putting it on your social media, I feel like it's really underused, telling folks in the areas that you're looking to buy that you're looking to buy. And it's really that simple. And then just knowing how to navigate conversations with folks without overwhelming them with words like subject to and creative financing. Really kind of, not lack of a better word, dumbing it down, but really like talking to like your kids or your neighbor, or your grandma, keep it simple. You don't want to talk all these crazy investor terms. If you're doing that, you're going to confuse them and then you're not going to get anywhere with the deal.
Yeah. If you told grandma you're buying houses sub 2, you're buying houses, real estate, grandma, with creative finance. My grandma's from Italy. She has a hard time understanding me anyways. But if I know that I'm talking about creative finance, she's definitely not going to understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
One question I see, Wendy, that I want to kind of address real quick too,
Yeah.
is do we deal with realtors that have pre-foreclosures and a short sale to do the same, bring the mortgage current and pay the commission to a realtor? So Wendy, that is a great question. So I'm going to honestly answer that is no, we typically don't. Because the reason why I bring that up is because the number one kiss of death for any creative finance deal is having too high of an entry fee into the deal. So there are times where maybe that could make sense for maybe a short-term fix and flip. I'm going to get into it and out of it quickly because I'm getting a real big discount. I could see that coming into play. But generally, if I'm going to buy a house that's in pre-foreclosure, maybe they're 20, 30, 50, $70,000 behind. And then I have to pay a realtor a 6% commission on top of that. And then most of the time I got to pay closing costs too. The cost of entry on that deal could be so high. The return on your cash is probably not going to be worth it in most cases. I can't say in every case, but in most situations, I wouldn't do that deal because my cost of entry is too high. Now, once again, if I'm getting the house for an extreme bargain, and a really, really big discount on the price of the house to where I could buy a $400,000 house for 175. I could put 50 into it and sell it. A situation like that, sure, I would. Right. But if it's a typical situation, and I run into these a lot, this is why I'm bringing this up, Wendy, is I've had somebody who bought a house for 200,000. They haven't made mortgage payments in 3 years. They got, $30,000 in back payments and back taxes and all the other stuff. And now the house isn't as nice. And if a realtor want to sell it, I have to pay that $30,000 in back payments, $12,000 in commissions. I'm $42,000 plus closing costs, another $5,000. I'm almost $50,000 out of pocket. I end up paying way too much for that house, and it just almost isn't worth it. So to be honest with you, the one thing I know that we do on our deals, rather that we're going to keep it in-house, and there's a lot of our deals that we assign to other investors too. I will promise you guys, our focus is on keeping the cost of entry as low as possible. That is our biggest thing. I could stretch and pay way more than anybody else can for the price of the house, but my monthly payments got to be low and my cost of entry has got to be so darn low it makes sense. Because if I pay a little bit more for the house, and we still get great deals, don't get me wrong, I'm not paying ridiculous money for these houses and we get tons of great deals. But if I'm going to stretch and pay a little bit more or even close to kind of ish top of the market, I need to make sure I'm getting that for no money down, guys. And I need to make sure I got a cheap payment so I can cash flow. Low entry fees. We also, too, if you don't have it, right under our Creative Finance Playbook page, we have a cost of entry worksheet. If you guys already haven't downloaded that thing for free, go download it. It's a worksheet that we use every single time I look at a deal. If you have a seller that you've talked to who says, yes, they're open for terms, fill out that worksheet, add it all up. That's your total cost of entry. Okay, that's going to be extremely important to know when you're looking at a deal, because I know if an investor brings me a deal and says, I have a creative finance deal, I say, okay, what's my cost of entry? And they should be able to have me this worksheet filled out where I know that exactly what I'm looking at. How far they are behind, closing costs, how much of a down payment. There's a whole list of stuff. So go to our Facebook page, guys, and download that cost of entry worksheet if you haven't already. Okay. Any other questions? I think we might have got. Okay, Philip, on the Zillow site, in the more drop down, scroll all the way down to keywords. Yes, Joseph. So in the section on Zillow for sale, or I think it says more, you could drop down the very bottom. It will say keywords. Those are those spots you want to put in that seller financing, owner financing. Don't put them in there together though. So, cause it won't work. So I do them separately. I was shocked how many I see in there, and it seems like that keeps on filling up more and more. So I would certainly use that. The one thing though, I will say I like Redfin. Gonna go a little over today, so I hope y'all are okay with that. The one thing I love about Redfin that seems they're really nice is I could go on Redfin, type in owner financing properties, and then there, because Zillow won't let me, but Redfin does, any properties that were listed for more than 30 days or more than 60 days or more than 90 days or whatever it is, they have that filter in there. So for me, I'll look at all of them, but the ones I'm going to start with are usually the ones that have been on there for more than 90 days that have owner financing the title. Those would be the guys I'm looking for first, and then I go down.
Not sure if you answered this one earlier. What about subject to, is there a way to pay the owner monthly on top of PITI if they don't care about a down payment?
Yeah, you could create a second note to the seller for monthly payment. Don't love it because it eats into your monthly cash flow. And cash flow is king for us, right? And if things happen, you're going to want that extra cash flow to help, right? So what I try to avoid at all costs are that. But would I rather give up $200 a month in cash flow or 15, 20 grand up front? I'd rather give up the $200 a month.
And then any other favorite lead gen strategies for local markets?
I love Facebook Marketplace for off-market deals. Obviously we all know driving for dollars works, but you'd be surprised how well that still works, because you could find a crappy house that just looks like it needs some love, right? The problem with that is you have to have something to be able to call those people, because a lot of people are afraid to talk on the phone. So Facebook Messenger always works good on some FISBOs on Facebook Marketplace. Zillow gets beat to snot, but we still find deals out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You still find deals on it. One of our students, guys, and I'm just going to brag about her real quick, Melanie. She's brand new. She's in Austin, Texas. She finds a deal in Dallas, Texas, in the DeBellum area, which if you know about Dallas, it's a pretty hot area. She finds a side-by-side duplex. The seller has it listed on Zillow for $550. She puts right in the topic, guys, that she will do seller financing. My student negotiates it down to $475 for the property at a 30-year term at 2% interest at a 10-year balloon. Locked up an amazing deal. So for her, she lived in Austin. I said, well, great. Do you want to keep that deal? She said, I don't think so. So she assigned it and got a really nice check for an investor who owns like 34 properties in the area. But that was right off Zillow, guys. So she gets a very nice check. Our buyer gets into a deal where now he has this steal of a deal because the ARV on the property, it needs some work, but the ARV was in the short 600s for the property. And at a 2% rate for 30-year term with a 10-year balloon. So she's making money on top of her price of her house. She's making some interest. She's happier than can be. Everybody's happy in that situation. That came right off Zillow. So although Zillow is beaten down, the value in what we create is by the terms that we negotiate.
Ooh.
Do you get that? I'm going to say that again. The value that we create are in the terms that we negotiate. So for an example, if I have a deal, you could get a $600,000 property for $475 that nets you around $800 a month clear, that you could get into at a 2% rate with no money down. Does that deal make sense? Sure does. Now, does that get me a big assignment fee? Probably does. Right? Now, if I had a deal that they're buying it for full price, needs work, big money down, no monthly spread, I'm not going to get a big assignment fee for that. So the value in what we create, guys, is by the terms that we negotiate. So the better you get at negotiating these terms deals, the more value you're building these deals. So it's really hard to say one size fits all. But I will tell you from my experience, and I'll share something with you that I kind of had a recent aha moment. This isn't something special. All of you guys can do it. But I think the reason why I did well with this business because my old background was in the car business. Now, when everybody buys real estate, they always focus on one thing. That's the price. Okay. And in the car business, people think about the price of the car, but we're also used to negotiating what? The monthly payment, the interest rate, the term length. Are you going to finance for 60 months? Or are you going to finance for 72? Go to 84. Are you going to lease or buy? Right. So we have to be creative and be not only just negotiating the price of something, there's other terms inside of it too. So I think of it almost like a car deal. I'm negotiating the price, but the price isn't always most important. If I have an $85,000 truck, but your payment's $299, you don't care what the price is. You don't care. That's the whole point of it. There's so many things to negotiate other than just the price, where you could feel like you made out and you won, and your seller made out and they feel like they won. So these are some of these things where I say, if the seller feels like they got a price, and I'll go over an example. One of my friends here, I'm helping him with, he's got a deal in Clearwater, Florida. Seller has a house. It was a rental. They don't want to rent anymore. They live out of state. They haven't seen this house in years. Tenant gets evicted. My friend does a walkthrough. We figure the ARV is probably 350, 375. House is in good shape, although one room of it is kind of like scabbed together a little bit. Could be much better, but it's not. Wish it was. So the way we negotiate that deal is $300,000 selling price. If they were to sell that in the market, they could probably get that or pretty close to it. House is a cute house. One of the bathrooms they built inside of it, they kind of did a shit job. Part of my language, but they did. So the way we negotiated that deal is 10 grand down, $300,000 for the house, 0% mortgage, and a 15-year balloon. So that comes out to a little over an $800 payment. Now, when we add in the insurance for that property, it was lucky. It was only about $100 a month. And some of these Florida places are insane. This wasn't very expensive. So it's $100 a month. So we're looking at about $950 payment with insurance. Here's the caveat, guys. The house right now is assessed at the county at $143. Taxes are $3 grand a year. He buys it at $300,000. The assessment will get changed. Your taxes will go up. So we'll keep that into consideration when you buy these properties, is what it's assessed for, the taxes are currently versus what your purchase price will be, and then what the taxes will be adjusted to accordingly. Don't get caught in the trick bag of buying a house on a sub 2 or a rep or seller finance, and it's got a really lowest assessment value, really low taxes. You buy it for a higher value. You got to remember, when that does get reassessed, your taxes will adjust. So if you think it's a tight deal now, when those taxes get readjusted, you could be in the red. And I know people who do that. So please, 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 best advice I could give you in that situation is, when you're buying one of these deals, see what it's currently assessed for, figure out what you're buying it for, call the county or the town. Some of these places have a little calculator where you can calculate it right on their site, but it will you're going to know what those taxes are. Because now when you build in the new taxes, the house rents for $2 grand a month to $2,500 all day long. So how can we make that deal work? We told the sellers, listen, we could stretch the 300 grand for your property. I think that's high. And I think if I buy it for 300 grand, I'm going to pay more than everybody else. But the way I can make that deal work is if I could do that with no money down, and instead of paying you the 3% interest that you wanted, I have to do that at 0% interest. But to be quite honest with you, the difference of 3% to 0 isn't a ton, but the difference of interest I will pay you, you have to pay income tax on that. And I know a lot of people don't want to pay income tax. So, and if I'm going to pay 300,000 for your house, which is a stretch, this is the way I would make that make sense for me. They said, I won't do no money down, but I will do 0% if you do 10 grand down. Okay. Sign me up, right? So that was just a deal that we're doing today in Clearwater. So these deals work even in the hottest markets in the country, because Clearwater is no joke. It's still a pretty competitive market there, guys. So if we could find these deals down in Tampa, Clearwater, in South Carolina, and all these other places, Orlando area, you can find them anywhere in the country. And we do. I knew one of the questions that was asked earlier was, how do we find our leads? We do a lot of social media marketing right on Facebook. We run sponsored ads. So
And you
we,
actually have a meeting coming up soon.
yeah, in half an hour, I have a meeting with our ad team to go
Mhm.
over what our new ads are going to look like, where they're going to go, what they're going to perform like. But we do spend quite a bit of money on there. We spend $140 a day. So it's not a lot, but it's enough. Adds up. But our average lead is probably under $10. It's probably like $7, $8 a lead. Went up a little bit.
So yeah, if you're coming across, I know Joe kind of mentioned earlier, but if you have a deal that you're looking at and you want to see that if it could potentially be a really great sub two, you're having difficulty structuring it, we have that tab where it is you submit all your information and it's going to go right into our CRM and our team is going to take a look at it and we're going to get back to you as soon as possible. So if you are playing around and you find yourself in a situation where you're like, oh my gosh, the seller is saying yes, and you need Joe to kind of jump in, we have this availability now. So I just want to throw that back out there. It's creativefinanceplaybook.com. And there's a little tab down there where it says you could partner, we could take a look at your deal. So make sure you're using that so we can help you guys out. Cause I know it's hard if you're messaging us or we're getting, you know, emails, that's kind of tricky, but if it's going right into the CRM, it's right in front of our face.
Well, I'm going to share that link right now down below. Because yes, I will promise you guys, if please, 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 I love you all. I really do. I just dropped that link down below.
Thanks.
Right where you could send it. But sometimes I'll get some messages in my DM on
Yeah.
like Facebook or Instagram, and I literally get so many, it gets lost. So I say, anybody who reaching out to me, like, let's take a look at your deal. If you send it in here, it goes into our CRM and our team picks it right up. So, and then they're going to start doing their thing on it to make sure we get on it right away. I've got one right now in Cincinnati that we're working on. Same situation. The folks bought this beautiful brick house. I mean, it's a higher end house, and their son got accepted into a school in a different school district, which they were really trying to get into. So these folks literally just bought this house for 400 grand. They listed it for 475. I think they have it dropped to 425 and it's not selling. I think they owe like 370 something on it. So this is one where we're trying to back into a sub two deal. The realtor is not having any luck. They're not having any showings. And this is just going down that road. So I had somebody reach out to me. They submitted the deal on that link. It goes right into our team because we have a team of 12 of us guys. So I have an acquisition manager. I got a dispo manager. We have acquisitionists. We have a whole bunch of us. So our job is once we get that lead, we're going to pull all the information, go through it. They're going to probably reach out to you, see how we can figure out if this deal is a good fit for everybody. So Curtis, oh, there you go. I just answered your question. And honestly, we are opening up an office here in the Tampa area. We're going to be hiring some folks in-house. We are going to be signing a lease for November 1st. So coming up in the future, which I was going to share with some of you guys, what we're going to do is have a large screen in the office. I'm going to have a webcam in the office. I'm going to have a live Zoom going. So at any point you guys want to pop in the Zoom and to see us on calls, to see what's going on, we're going to have that ability too. So we're going to do a lot of live events from the office. So you're going to see us actually like sitting there structuring deals. And if you're just sitting at work, you want to spy on us, come click, join in and see what we're working on. And we're going to have that going on too. So we are looking to hire probably 3 to 4 people in the next few weeks in our area.
In person. This is not a virtual position.
Yeah. So we're going to be like the Sarasota area. It's where our office is going to be, Bradenton area. So what's going to happen is we have our team virtually. We love that. But there are some of these tasks that would feel much better being in person. And I love the team feel of it too. So our team is going to stay on as we have them, but we definitely need help with all of our incoming leads because we get close to a couple hundred a week. And we want to turn that number up. So in order to do that, I need to have people be able to help with us. So I've had a few folks reach out who live far away, and I would never say no to great talent, but you need to move here where it's nice and warm. So
yes, Lou, you may submit from California. It doesn't matter the state. We can definitely take a look. Just make sure that you give us every possible information. I know sometimes people are putting in, they forget their city or the state, and it's kind of hard to figure out where in the world it is. So make sure that we do put down all of the information.
Abby, if you're still here, I think you are. Did you update that on there, Abby, to where I don't know if she's
They
here.
have to. I think she might have found. She's filling in right now. So
Okay.
she's booking your closing call schedule, Mr. Delle.
Good. Oh, that's right. She's busy. She's on acquisitions right now. Okay, yes. So I will make sure that's changed because I think we need to have that information to move forward because I've had some submitting and it'll be like 125 Elm Street. And I'm like, okay, that's a good start, but there's a few Elm Streets around the country. So can I at least have a zip code? So if you have a deal, please, please, please submit them. I'd love to take a look at them. I'd love to. And Jen just said this the other day, guys, like we want to start JVing more. I think this is where we're missing the boat. So we want to be able to find folks who have a deal that they're working on that it would make sense for us and them to work together. Not saying it has to turn into a long partnership where, we're 50-50 on the deal, but we could help each other make deals. And that's what it's about.
I just dropped in there. If you are local and you want an in-person position, email me. I'll set you up with some interviews and we'll go from there. And then our buy box, as far as our cash creative deals, you keep going back and forth on that. So I'll let you answer.
So our buy box for cash, we get so many leads, guys. I really don't buy cash deals. If we do, like I've got some we're buying right now, but I generally try not to buy cash deals because unless I do, it's going to be a really good deal. I will always look at them, every single deal, creative or cash, because I always feel like there's no deal wasting my time. And if I can look at it in 5 minutes because you gave us all the pertinent information, I can look at it quickly and say, okay, this is something we're close to a deal, or this is no deal, or, oh yeah, we got one here, let's go, right? And then we'll work our way through it. Because the thing is, I could see a lot of different ways to structure a deal. So sometimes you might bring us a deal that could be a good fit for cash, where I could see it could be a great fit for a creative deal too. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll all get on the phone call together and we'll call that seller and see if we could structure that under a creative finance deal too. So there are some times where I've had a lot of wholesalers reach out to us and say, I've got a deal locked up. Sometimes it's too high and it's not selling, and that's why they're reaching out. So we try to restructure that deal. We keep the price the same, but let's take a look at creative terms. And sometimes it works. And it doesn't every time, but a lot of times you'd be surprised, guys.
And one more service that we never advertise is we have one lady in Rochester who loves the rent to own model. And yet she doesn't want to learn how to handle the disposition of that. And so she hires us and our team, and we take care of finding, screening, and then allowing her to choose that end final tenant buyer. But if you are in a position where you have a property and you don't want to rent, or you don't want a rental any longer, and you want to go down that rent to own, we have that available too. And we're just really terrible at marketing that. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, it's kind of weird we got thrown into it because like we do a great job with our own properties, and we'd had somebody else say in our own hometown that obviously you guys must get a lot of incoming leads. And I said, yeah, we could get a 200 to 300 a day. And she's like, I work full time and I don't have the ability to screen 200 to 300 people a day. And I said, yeah, and that goes on for weeks, sometimes months. So it's not easy. But when we do find the right tenant buyer, like they come in a package delivered. I mean, the background checks, the whole thing, income, like we found somebody who's great. They passed all the things, they got this much money, and then she gives it the stamp of approval or the decline. And if she gets the stamp of approval, there she goes, plug and play. So we already did one for her, went great. Now she has her second house that we're doing like right now. We just got the pictures. So if you need any help with any of those dispoing and you want to try that in a single family home, rent to own, maybe you have a rental now and that lease is coming up, we could love to help you with that too.
Absolutely.
We have a whole dispo team, gang, so we're here to help.
It was fun. I can't wait to see everybody again next week. And this will go on to YouTube sooner than the last one did. Again, thank you for your patience. And as always, if questions arise, throw them in the group. We are trying to be as active as possible. We love the community there. Keep sharing on social. And if you need anything, shoot us a message.
And if you guys haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, please like and subscribe. There's a ton of great content on there. Creative Finance Playbook. I'm telling you guys, we put so much stuff on there now. All of these are on there. So definitely go subscribe to that YouTube channel because we're going to start putting some exclusive stuff up on there. And when we start Zooming live and doing lives from the office, I'm going to try to do a lot of them on YouTube as well so we could get through all the comments. You aren't going to want to miss that because we're going to be there at 9 a.m. till who knows what time every day, calling these leads, and you're going to see it done live. So if you want to see what we're saying, the deals, where we're finding them, the whole nine, like just tune in, guys. We're going to share it all with you. So definitely go check out the YouTube channel. And thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next Tuesday.
All righty. Have a great day, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.